I don't like this light bullshit. Look big and look taller.
Now you're out of frame.
Just fucking videotape. Just go with the flow. Can't force it. Can't force it.
My name is Liz, but they called me Handstand on the Appalachian Trail. With absolutely zero backpacking experience, I traveled down to Georgia to begin my 2,190-mile hike up to Maine. I spent 161 days walking, hiking, and climbing through snow, rain, more rain, and occasionally some sunshine. While on the trail, I turned 30 years old, had a bout with Lyme disease, and even got married. It was the experience of a lifetime. Now that I've survived my thru hike, I'm super excited to share everything that I've learned with you. Hey guys! Today I am super excited to share with you my top 10 moments on the Appalachian Trail. So since I've been home and people have been asking me about my trip, it's been really hard to figure out what to say. You can't really quantify or explain the experience because it just was so long and so much happened during that time. So I thought narrowing it down to my top 10 moments on the AT might be a good way to do that. It was really hard to do. I made a list of a million things and then I had to narrow it down, but here's what I came up with. Number 10, bear encounter. So I ended up seeing 9 black bears while I was on the Appalachian Trail, but 2 of those really stick out. Probably not a surprise, but my first black bear experience. The first time I saw one, I was down in Tennessee.
First of all, good morning. Second of all, I just saw my first bear.
I was hiking completely by myself, and to be honest, I didn't even see it. I apparently scared the bear, so when the bear heard me, he took off like a shot, which then scared me, and I just froze. Without having time to really process it, I actually thought it was a dog at first.
I kind of thought it was a dog at first, to be honest. It was down in a valley. It heard me and just took off and I don't know, the way it ran, I just saw black and thought it was a dog. It was kind of far away, so it didn't look that big. So it took a minute to really process, but there was no one else around. It's just after 7 in the morning. It wasn't anywhere near the trail or anything like that. Definitely a bear.
And the way that he ran, he kind of looked like a dog. So it wasn't really until after he was out of the picture that I realized that was a bear. I was full of adrenaline and I will never forget that experience.
My heart's racing and it's exciting because I've been kind of stressed about seeing one, I think, but that was a good way to see one. I would be stressed if it were sniffing around my tent when I was asleep, but to just see one in the middle of the day or morning was pretty cool.
The second bear experience, I was in Shenandoah National Park with Evan. It was our second day in the park. Now in Shenandoah, the animals are really used to seeing people, so they don't back down or run away. Evan and I were minding our business, walking along the trail, and we looked up and there was a bear, I don't know, 50 to 100 feet maybe in front of us, right in the middle of the trail. We stopped dead in our tracks, and then of course we got our video cameras out. Then the bear started walking towards us and closing in on that distance. I put my camera away. I wanted to turn around and run, but you're not supposed to do that with black bears. You're supposed to stand up and get intimidating to them and make a lot of noise and make them scared of you. No sound came out of my mouth. Luckily, Evan did start kind of yelling at the bear, and I just banged my trekking poles over my head, making myself look as big as I could while standing behind Evan. The bear wasn't really fazed. He kept kind of moseying towards us for a little while, and then he just sort of stopped, looked at us, and decided he didn't want to deal with us, I think, so he kind of turned the other way and walked off into the woods. My heart was pumping. I'm so glad Evan was there for that one, and those are the 2 bear experiences that I will never forget. Number 9, hot springs. So the first time that Luke came out to visit me, we actually ended up spending a couple of days in Hot Springs, North Carolina. One of the days that we were there, we decided to go find our friends, All Good Smokestack, 000, and 000's brother. We were staying at a hotel in town, but they were camping down by the river. When we got there, I think they had already been drinking for quite a long time.
Hey! Hey-oh!
Is this the spot?
It's the spot!
It's the spot!
Yeah!
But all All Good, the Australian, asked if we would want to float down the river. Now this is almost like whitewater river. It's a huge river, tons of rocks, a really fast current. It is definitely not something that I would have just done on my own without seeing other people doing it. Nobody else was doing it at the time, but All Good had apparently already been doing it, so he told me that he would take me down himself where he knew it was safe. We all ended up going a bunch of times. It was so fun. Luke and I always look back on that as one of our favorite memories. I feel like most of my trip was so planned out, and that was one of those times that was just really random and impulsive and just based on, you know, the circumstance and who we happened to be hanging out with is why we had that experience, and we wouldn't have had it otherwise. Number 8, the halfway festivities. So making it halfway on the Appalachian Trail was a huge deal to me. That's when I think I really felt like, okay, I got this, I'm gonna finish. And to top it off, the halfway festivities lasted for like a week, it felt like. First we hit 1,000 miles, then we hit Harper's Ferry, which is kind of the unofficial halfway point. Getting into Harper's Ferry, West Virginia felt huge to me. Like most people do, I went to the ATC to get my picture taken on the Polaroid and put into their binder to make it official that I had passed that checkpoint. I feel like this is kind of like an iconic moment on the AT that everybody's looking forward to. After leaving Harper's Ferry, it didn't take long to hit the actual halfway point, mileage-wise, where I of course did a handstand walk over that point while singing Bon Jovi.
Oh, we're halfway there. Oh, living on a prayer.
The last of the halfway celebration was when we got to, I think it's called Pine Grove Store, where they do the half-gallon challenge. This is where the thru hikers attempt to eat a half-gallon of ice cream to celebrate the fact that we've made it halfway. Our friend Zach joined us for the challenge, and while we were doing it, it was really fun. It took me about 45 minutes to eat it, and then about 5 minutes after that to immediately regret it. Luke went home after that, but I had to keep hiking that day, and man, it was miserable. But I was proud of myself for doing it, I don't regret it, and I will never forget it. Number 7, Grayson Highlands. Grayson Highlands is one of those places that I knew about before I hiked the trail, and I could not wait to get there. It's in Virginia, and it is famous because there are wild ponies there. Leading up to it, I kind of figured it's got to be one of those things that my expectations were way too high and it's not going to be as cool as I thought it was going to be. But believe it or not, it was better. I had sort of fallen into stride with a group at that time. I was hiking with me, Luke, Evan, and then our friends Grizz, Smokey, and Denny. So the 6 of us went into Grayson Highlands together. Not only were there wild ponies there were plenty of wild ponies there, and those ponies had babies. There were baby wild ponies. They let us pet them, they let us take pictures of them. It was amazing. And on top of that, I think beforehand I kind of assumed that this was going to be just like fields with ponies in it. What I wasn't expecting is that it's actually a beautiful hiking area. It was really mountainous with a lot of views. We had perfect weather that day. It was beautiful. Grayson Highlands ended up being all I expected and way more. Number 6, a surprise visit by my mother. As I hiked through Pennsylvania, I got really sick. I tested positive for Lyme disease and then got put on medication for that made me feel even worse. About a week after being on the medication, I hiked into Palmerton, Pennsylvania, where I was supposed to stay at a hostel. Evan and I hitchhiked into town, and as soon as I walked through the door, my mom was standing there with her husband.
Alright, so I just walked into where I was supposed to stay at the hostel tonight, and this is my mom and her husband Mike. They totally surprised me. Hi guys, you missed the reaction.
It turned out Evan and my mom had been corresponding and set the whole thing up. I had absolutely no idea, and I don't know if I've ever been so surprised in my life. My mom lives in New Hampshire, so I was certainly not expecting to see her in Pennsylvania.
And
Drove down from New Hampshire.
Oh, you drove? How long was the drive?
No, we
Yes.
flew.
Yeah, I guess that makes
6
sense.
hours.
I don't know what state I'm in, okay?
6 hours.
So I might have cried a little bit.
It couldn't have come at a better time either because, like I said, I was really sick and that was just such a boost that I needed. They ended up surprising me one more time, sort of, after that. As I was coming through New Hampshire, it was my birthday, so my mom wanted to come up and see me. So we had plans to meet at a hostel. As I was hiking out, I came around the corner and right on the trail was my mom and Mike singing me happy birthday.
Happy birthday, dear Elizabeth. Happy birthday to you.
I was not expecting you to be on the trail.
Layla's sneaking up on you.
That was unexpected, but also a nice surprise. Number 5, the Triple Crown of Virginia. It might be cliche, but I could not leave the Triple Crown of Virginia off the list. That includes Dragon's Tooth, McAfee Knob, and Tinker Cliffs, which all happened in about a day or two. Dragon's Tooth was first. I didn't know much about it beforehand, but it's basically just this like rock formation that kind of looks like a dragon's tooth, and you can actually climb up it if you want, and there are gorgeous views. It was actually a little scary being on the very tip. I'm not normally scared of heights, but it's well worth the trip up there. Next up was McAfee Knob. This I did know about beforehand, as I'm sure most people do, and I had been dying to get my very own handstand picture on it since I started researching about the AT. It's an iconic spot on the AT that everyone takes their picture, and I was getting stressed out beforehand that the weather might not be cooperating, and I told Evan I am waiting on McAfee Knob until I get good weather and get a good handstand picture. I am not leaving. Luckily, it was really nice out that day. It was kind of windy, so I had to wait out the wind for a little bit, but I did get my handstand picture, and it was everything I dreamed of. McAfee Knob is only about 700 miles in, but to me, that felt like a huge accomplishment. It was just something I had been dying to get to and working towards since I started. Tinker Cliffs came right after that to finish off the Virginia Triple Crown, which is basically just an area about a half a mile or a mile maybe with all these cliffs and really nice views off to the left, and you can actually look back and see McAfee Knob. I loved this area. It would be a great place to go if you were just gonna do a section. Number 4, White House Landing. So White House Landing was a hostel basically in the middle of the 100-mile wilderness in Maine. First of all, we got off the trail onto a dock and they came and picked us up by boat from across the lake. The couple that runs it are super nice. There's all these little cabins. It's kind of an off-the-grid place, so everything is run on solar. They've got apple trees and gardens. It's amazing. Not only was it one of my favorite places that I stayed, but this was also our rehearsal dinner. So most of you know Luke and I got married. This actually happened at White House Landing a couple days before we got married. So it was kind of our big joke that it was our rehearsal dinner. We had an amazing dinner there. We did a little practice run of our ceremony, but we were keeping the wedding a surprise, so I couldn't even tell anyone about that on my trail videos. But it ended up just being the perfect night. They had canoes there, so we took the canoes out on the lake. You could see Mount Katahdin in the background. I was with Luke, Evan, and Yelp, so I had my closest people to me, and it was just the perfect night. We were almost done the trip. We were soaking it in. We all knew it was so awesome as it was happening and that we would never forget it. Number 3, Max Patch. Pretty much this whole hike, whenever people asked what my favorite part was, Luke and I would always say Max Patch. Max Patch is a mountain in like North Carolina, so early on in the hike. It's bald on top, it's just a big field, and so a ton of people camp there. We got up there early in the afternoon. It is beautiful up there. We had perfect weather. The views were amazing. We'd really started making a lot of friends, so we had a bunch of people up there that we knew. We got to have dinner, relax, and enjoy the most beautiful sunset I think I saw on the entire Appalachian Trail. After the sun went down, the moon came up, and it was like a blood moon or something, I think. So it was a bright orange full moon. And then we got to wake up to a gorgeous sunrise. Max Patch was one of the most beautiful spots on the AT to camp, and we lucked out with perfect weather on top of it. I don't want to give away any of my future plans, but just maybe I'll see Max Patch again. Number 2, Evan's surprise. Okay, so let me set this one up. First of all, I was having one of my best days on the trail. I was in New Hampshire, and I know I'm biased, but New Hampshire is the best. I hadn't been having great weather, but on this day we were entering the presidentials and it was beautiful out. My friend Karen and my friend Todd had both come up to visit and hike with me for the day. So we hiked up Webster and went along the presidentials. We went over Eisenhower and Monroe, which the AT doesn't even go over. It actually goes around the summits, but I made everyone go over the summits because I had done them before. I knew how amazing they were. And we just lucked out. It was so perfect. My friends ended up going home, and then Luke and Yelp and I made it to Lakes of the Clouds Hut, which also is so beautiful. We lucked out with a work first day. There was the best sunset. Everything was great. But there was one thing missing, and that was Evan. Evan and I had been hiking together since we entered Virginia. Once we got into Vermont, I think, Evan started to get really sick. He was having a hard time keeping up with the mileage. I took it down a little bit so that we could stay together. Once we hit New Hampshire, I had a little bit more of a schedule. Like I said, I had friends visiting and stuff like that, and Evan decided to stay behind a little bit. We all had plans to meet back up within the week or two. I was going to get to where I needed to go and see the people I needed to see, and then I was going to take as many zeros as I needed to for him to catch back up. He was going to go to the doctors and try to get his shit straight and then hike as fast as he could to catch back up. Anyways, I hadn't really heard from him. Our phone service was terrible. I had sent him like our schedule of what we were doing, but we didn't expect to see him for a couple more days. We were planning to take a zero after the presidentials. Well, lo and behold, I wake up at Lakes of the Clouds Hut. We're going to leave super early to head up Mount Washington. I'm getting my shit together, and I think there was a tap on my shoulder.
Hey, turn around. 30 miles.
It was one of the best moments ever. I was so happy to see him. I felt so guilty that he was behind us. We were about to go over Mount Washington, and it was so good to have the gang back together. Me, Luke, Evan, and Yelp on top of Mount Washington. There are no words to describe. That was one of the best days I think all four of us had on the trail. And number one, summit day. So of course I'm sure that summiting Mount Katahdin is probably the highlight of most people's thru hikes. But for me, I kind of didn't have a choice. It also happened to be my wedding day, and I think Luke might have been offended if I didn't put this as number one. I'm just kidding. No, I really wanted it to be number one. So we planned ahead for Katahdin so that we'd have a couple of days to play with depending on weather. We really wanted to summit on a good weather day. Well, we lucked out, and the first day that we were able to summit was looking pretty good. So we went up. Katahdin was way cooler of a hike than I ever knew that it was or imagined that it was. It's kind of easy right in the beginning, and then the difficulty goes through the roof as far as like rock climbing goes, which I really like. It would suck in the rain, no joke about that, but we had perfect weather. After the crazy intense part, it gets pretty easy again, and then boom, you're at the top, you're done the trail. As I reached the sign, that was probably one of my most proudest moments in my life. But I also had something else on my mind, and that was picking out a location for my wedding. Luke and I had talked about doing this since really early on in the trail, but based on the percentage of people that actually finished the trail, I don't think I really knew if I would even make it that far. So we didn't start making more solid plans until we got up into New England. Evan got ordained, Luke and I got off the trail when we got into Maine to get our marriage license, and then once we got up to Katahdin, we got to do our thing.
We are gathered here today at the summit of Mount Katahdin, Maine.
Like I said, the weather was beautiful. I feel so lucky that it all worked out. There was a bunch of people up there. Everyone was really respectful while we were exchanging our vows. And then when we were done, everybody cheered. It was so perfect. All right, I don't think I can top that one off, so that's gonna have to conclude my top 10 moments on the Appalachian Trail. Ooh, actually. Lou?
Yes.
What was your favorite moment on the AT, your top moment on the Appalachian Trail?
Well, number one would have to be marrying you.
Oh, that's sweet, but I already did that one, so pick another one.
Fuck off. Another one would have to be, Max Patch. That was a big one that I enjoyed. It was fun, and I actually had that shitty.
Nope, already talked about it.
White Landing in the 100 Mile Wilderness was fun.
White House Landing, yeah. Nope, already did that one.
Good weed too.
Pick it, everyone.
Oh, here's one. What about Bethel? What about Bethel with the pie eating?
The pie one, I didn't do that one. That was a good one. Tell us that one.
So we came off of some mountain and it was raining. It was just dumping all day. I think that was in Maine. That was in the beginning of Maine. I just remember the rain pouring. There's like a river in the trail, kind of like the Smokies. It was very similar. And you know, I'm on the phone with some shuttle service and trying to get rides off the mountain, and it was just nobody would pick up. I had a guy telling me to go fuck myself. It's not fun. So we finally were trying to figure it out. We were coming off. It was cold. It was wet. I'm like worrying the whole time coming down the mountain, and so we get down to the mountain, and we have, what's her name, Miss Janet with the cool bus. So she picked us up, which was convenient, and then on the way, she stopped at this pie stand, which was fucking savage, because it was just like you just pay for the pie on the spot, like no people, no nothing, you know. So we go in, we get 2 pies. I forget the pies. I think it was like one was like a rhubarb, one was like a cherry or something. It's delicious. So then we finally get a ride in, and I mean we're soaked to the bone, we're cold, and we finally get to this fucking place. It's just this little tiny fucking motel with these 2 women that were like fucking awesome. And you know, that night we sat down on the deck on the porch, which was a really nice porch. It was the Bethel Inn, that's what it was. It was right on the porch. It was, you know, big wraparound porch. We all sat down and we had the 2 pies in front of us. And Ricky had his chocolate milk. I forget what I was drinking. And we just ate those 2 full pies and sat there and talked about how shitty the day was before we got there. So it's just one of those times where everybody came together and we worked together to cut those pies.
What else happened in Bethel that was significant?
I think we got a marriage license or some shit. I don't know. This is...
Miss Piggy, what was your favorite AT moment?
when I took a shit. She's like, Mom, these lights suck.
Okay, now that concludes our top 10 moments on the Appalachian Trail. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments or things you want to see in the future, go ahead and leave a comment down below. And if you want to keep seeing updates from me, don't forget to subscribe. See you guys on the next video.